first I just want to say thank you for your wholehearted engagement in that ceremony. It was so nice to hear people's voices, hear a little bit about your loved ones. And it seems to be quite appropriate for the talks that I've been giving. This is the second in the series of Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi. In that Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi states, the Dharma of thusness is intimately transmitted by Buddhas and ancestors. Now you have it, preserve it well. Now you have it, preserve it well. And here, we just did a ceremony to honor some of our ancestors, those people who have touched us deeply. And it's so interesting, the nature of story in our lives. So often we say, this person did such and such a thing, and it had this impact on me. And that's just the impact that we are able to consciously process. So many impacts, so many touched lives, so many touched hearts in this room. We need to continue to honor those beings, known, unknown, who have awakened in us the spirit of touching deeply the life that is in front of us, engaging with lessons, engaging with sessions, expressing. So this is a teaching poem. I'm going to just do a little bit of review, and we don't have a ton of time, which is okay. So I wasn't sure if it was just going to be 2 parts, but certainly it will be 3 parts, maybe more. We'll just see how far along we go. So this teaching poem is credited to Dongshan. Dongshan was a Chan master. Chan is the Zen tradition in China before going to Japan. And he's also the first in the Caodong lineage. I think I was corrected last week, and I really appreciated it, but I can't remember. Cao Dong. Thank you so much. So he's the first in that lineage, and this was the same lineage that Dogen practiced in China, brought back to Japan, which became Soto. So this is the tradition of the practice. And this particular teaching poem has a number of themes in it. It's one that I personally very much love. But one of the primary themes is thusness, suchness, emptiness, as something that we can engage with, as something that can engage with us. So Taigen Dan Leighton, if you were here last week, you heard this. And if you weren't, this might be a first, but suchness and its significance do respond to our own sincere spiritual inquiry. Suchness and its significance do respond to our own sincere spiritual inquiry. So sometimes we can consider this in terms of, in the call, there is the response. So in the call to earnestly, spiritually awaken, there is a response. There is a response. And I thought it would be really nice to share a story about how I began to, one of the ways in which I've historically engaged with it, and an affirmation that I received from my teacher, which I did not expect to receive, in terms of helping us sort of potentially understand how we might sincerely engage with thusness. This is a practice that we have to do. We have to do it in our own way. Myriad teachings, myriad ways that demonstrate it. And we have to put it in motion for ourselves. And it's already in motion. so interesting to me. We walk this very fine line of, we've inherited this ancient tradition that we ourselves as so-called individuals put into motion. And so we have this vast tradition behind us. We have this vast tradition that we seek to honor by practicing. And we need to practice in our own way. We have to. And we can't not put it into motion in our own way. So it's this tension between what is this great way of the ancients? What is this great way of the sages? How do we put that into motion? We practice, we play with it, we sit on our cushions, we walk, we work in the backyard, we chop down limbs of trees, put it into motion. We discern what is the response, what is my call. So during my first Rohatsu session, I went up for Dokusan with my teacher, Donin Tedo Chul. And my primary practice at the time, because it was what was needed, was more or less, we'll just say, for the sake of storytelling, was more or less two things. It was a lot of self-compassion, a tremendous amount of self-compassion. I felt my suffering was quite inescapable when I was on the cushion, sat down, and it seemed to proliferate. That's how sometimes it felt to me. But also, it was arising because it was prepared to be taken care of, this great suffering. So the practice was two parts. A lot of self-compassion, a lot of experiencing what's arising, caring for it, or caring for myself. And the other part of my practice, as the mind, the heart, the body began to settle, was I would do this practice where I would sort of call out. It was just an inward calling out to something. And I was a little bit embarrassed about this, because it's not something that we talk about in Zen practice. And I wanted to vet it with my teacher. I was prepared for the first time to go upstairs in the Dokusan room and kind of tell myself, this is what I've been doing. Am I going to get kicked out of the Zen Center or not? Am I taking these teachings and am I turning them into something else? What is your take on this? I was prepared to be corrected. I was prepared to be encouraged to do something different. So I went up to the Dokusan room and I said, I do this really weird thing sometimes where I'm sitting, where I call out. I don't necessarily know what I'm calling out to. When I call out, there's a sense that there is a response. There's a sense that something is hearing, seeing. As I'm hearing, seeing, something seems to be hearing, seeing back. I'm certainly riffing. I think I was pretty brief. I think it was more like, I'm doing this thing, it's embarrassing, I don't think it's Zen. What are your thoughts? You talk to the universe. And he said, well, that's just having a conversation with the universe. That's just having a conversation with the universe. And I was so relieved. I'm sure I visibly kind of relaxed. And he said, one of the ways of looking at the Genjo Koan is as a conversation with the universe. So you can see that this particular approach was beneficial for me. And it was really helpful for me to invite something that was a little bit different. So sometimes we talk about it as Ta-Riki and Ji-Riki. Ta-Riki and Ji-Riki. So Ji-Riki is self-power. So doing it ourselves, we're getting our butts on the cushion, as Tim Burkett likes to say. Get our butts on the cushion. Ji-Riki, we put in the effort. We have our meditation practice, we fall off, we put in the effort. Go ahead. When we get the precepts wrong, we put in the effort, we apply ourselves again. It's Ji-Riki. And then Ta-Riki is other power. So relying on something else. And here we are in this particular culture that is profoundly Christian. So I think it's just important to name that when we talk about other power, this sort of frame may really impact the way that we hear it in a way that is positive, and it may also impact it in a way that is very negative or afflictive. So as we talk about Ta-Riki, know that we have these lenses, know that we have this way of talking about it that is particularly cultural. And again, finding a way for us as so-called individuals to relate to this idea of Ta-Riki in a way that makes sense for us. So Ta-Riki is other power. So for some people, this is service. Calling on the Buddhas in the 10 directions. Calling on the Buddhas in the 10 directions 3 times. For some people, it's not so helpful. For some people, archetypal is much more helpful. Calling on the Buddha that you already are. Calling on the ancestors that you already are. The ancestors that are in you that can take care of the various afflictions. Keep our mind small. And remembering now, actually, what Ted said was, well, that's talking to big mind. He did say that was talking to big mind. She said it's talking to big mind. So, your small self can converse with the big self. Converse with the self. So, Ta-Riki. For others, Ta-Riki may even just be offering the efforts of work practice, offering the efforts of lunch, offering the efforts of cleaning the living room to the boundlessness that is our very nature. It could be Ta-Riki. And in that offering, emptiness of the 3 wheels, giver, receiver, and gift, merging with that which is great. Great is certainly an understatement. So, how do we engage with thusness? How do we engage with suchness? How do we engage with emptiness? How do we make a call in which we feel that we can hear a response? So somebody's call might look like very ritualistic offering. Somebody's call might look like walking down the sidewalk in great wonder. Somebody's call might be considering the vastness of the universe itself, unlikelihood of its beginning, unlikelihood of being here. All of the permutations that this life could be. Here we are. So consider for a moment, what might be your call? And working with words and letters can be a challenge because we're talking about experience. So maybe as we are doing this ceremony today, you could sort of feel sort of the energy of the room. You could feel this call of the ancestors. You could feel this call of the response of your loved ones and the way that they operate in your body. Perhaps that's one way we can conceive it. Perhaps this call could be sitting zazen, bearing courageous witness to this life that's arising. Inviting in a different way of being. Perhaps for you it's study. So considering, how do we engage? How do we engage with suchness? Taigen Dan Leighton says of this poem, this refers to the depths of this reality, to the teachings about this reality, and how to engage it. and how to engage it yesterday might be entirely different than how to engage it now. And how to engage it now might be unusual. It might also be very ordinary. So I think given the timing of where we're at in our Sunday programming, I'll end there, and I'd love to just open it up for comment, for question, for sharing your own experience. And the next talk that I give will likely be part 3 or 2.5.
For our visitors, can you explain suchness a bit more?
Certainly, yeah. So suchness is considered to be reality. Suchness is considered to be emptiness. Emptiness meaning no thingness. Emptiness meaning profound, incomprehensible interconnection. And that being an experience that can be realized moment to moment. So, experience. So, just a real quick practical example in terms of the profound interdependence. The breakfast you ate this morning, if you had breakfast, maybe you had a large dessert, you can reflect on that. Was most likely plucked off of a grocery shelf, was most likely exchanged for money that has been earned, that has been put into motion by myriad things, the food itself, grown, processed, myriad people, myriad processes. And it's just one way of considering interdependence in our life. So there's that as an idea, and there's that as an experience. How do we engage that? How do we live that? How do we do that from moment to moment? And we have this tradition talks about it in terms of compassion. That understanding is a very long answer to your invitation. That this particular practice, seeing interdependence in a deep way, creates a sense of compassion. A sense of, oh, wow, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Other comments or questions?
Thank you for sharing. I often, when we were talking, I thought about when I hear a lot of times people say thoughts and prayers. And this feels very much like a way to say, I'm going to call the universe, respond to it. Any thoughts on that?
Sort of the analogous nature of prayer in this particular approach that I'm talking about. Yeah, let's see, what do I want to say about that?
Well, define prayer. I mean, there have been critiques that, God is not Santa Claus, right? So do you mean prayer? Do you mean asking for things? Do you mean, what do you mean by prayer?
When I always find myself struggling to just say thoughts and prayers, it just feels like it's not enough.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if that call and response, whether that feels more aligned with my philosophy.
Yeah. Sometimes these questions in and of themselves feel really complete to me, in the sense that maybe a response that I can offer hopefully will just leave you with question for yourself. So I would say continue to ask that question, which certainly sounds like a cop-out. Like, I don't know.
Birdie.
But on the other hand, keeping these questions alive really helps us in our practice. And that feeling that you're talking about, like thoughts and prayers, certainly feels insufficient. And I know that feeling too. Sometimes, people talk about the suffering that's going on in their lives. And what can we offer that is sufficient to match the amount of suffering that's in the world? And yet we are of the nature to offer whatever we can. So if in perhaps this approach or this framework, there's something in there that ignites sort of that bodhicitta, then orient toward that.
That was good. It just made me think of, it's almost like offering forgiveness in my mind. You do that for yourself, whereas the thoughts and prayers idea is more comforting to somebody else, and that may be the connection that they value. If somebody has had some loved one pass, and you say, "Oh, you're my thoughts and prayers," it offers. It's almost like, to me, an olive branch that is given to that other person so they can feel a connection to you and some warmth that somebody's thinking about. I don't know. That's what came to mind.
And in a way, that's a call and response.
Right. Yeah. You put the call out and they get a response because of how they
Or
receive
the
it.
other person
Or the
puts a call out
Right.
to you and you
Right.
respond.
Depending on which way it's going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I really think you can look at prayer as just a conversation. Because I hear you growing up in a very Nazarene family, I idea that you prayed for literally everything. Most of what you were praying for was very selfish, if you really thought about it. But in a good conversation, the conversation is call and response. You simply call out, the universe responds. And it's been my experience, regardless, the universe is going to respond. Whether you get the answer you wanted or not.
That's true.
But you will get a response. So instead of that Western approach of prayer, I think you can look at this more as a conversation. And any good conversation is just that, it's a good conversation. It may not necessarily be the answer that you're looking for, but it is an answer.
And to the point of what you said to Brian is, sometimes just thinking about the question, basically puts the call out there. And, sometimes it's internal. The universe is inside, so that it gives you the answer when you think about the question.
Rainier Maria Wilka said, live the question. Live the question. All right, maybe one more, and then we should eat some cookies. Drink some tea.
Yeah, I like to think Zen is or even our lives is an answer to a question we don't know how to ask. So it's like to start with the answer first, which is this very moment. And then questions will arise, but you're already living in the answer. This very moment. Or not.
Old band.
I think you're right. Just start meditating for a while before you get in. That's
Yeah, answers are.
Well, thank you all for your
Thank you.
kind attention.
Announcements.
Announcements. Next Sunday is the second Sunday of the month, so this is start of our second Sunday of the month work period, which starts at 8:30 before Sunday opens in, reminding you of that. And the following Saturday, 14th, we'll have a Sangha work day. So that'll be 2 hours, 9 to 11. Is Mike still here? Basically, that'll probably mostly, unless it's raining, that'll be outside work because there's plenty of it. So presence is appreciated. And then the week following that, I believe we're having a 3-day sesshin, registration on the website. In case you didn't notice, we have the Tibetan monks here staying with us right now. So they'll be here for 2 weeks?
Yeah, 14, 16 days.
14, 16
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
And, maybe we can talk to them about providing us with, some kind of demonstration service like they did last time. And they like to offer that to us free in return for housing them here while they're in town. So,
Yeah, next week is World Peace Ceremony unless the monks want.
It's what?
Next week is World Peace Ceremony
Oh, okay.
unless the monks want to do something.
Oh, yeah, maybe we can talk to them
Yeah.
about whether, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. That's a great idea. Anything else?
One more word on the monks. They are they're doing a tour, and one of the things that they're doing is they're currently making a mandala right now, is my understanding. I believe they're also going to be hosting a tea ceremony and some other things. The details of that is a little bit hazy, but good news. After this, I'll go grab my phone and find the information and just write it down on a big piece of paper. So if you have to leave immediately after this, but you're curious about that, just stay for 3 extra minutes, and then I'll come down and provide those details. If you're going to hang out for a little bit, there will be a piece of paper with those details of where to go if you're interested in engaging with what the monks will be here.
Yeah, and I've seen them working on the sand mandala before. It's fascinating. It's very interesting. That's all I can think of.
So let's do a formal close. Let's replace your cushions back where they were. Stand behind them.